process of getting the last of our garlic in this season and doing some nursery work. Sean and I harvested a bunch of root vegetables out of some of the beds to release them, and also we wanted to harvest the roots before they froze and thawed too many times before winter, so I'm gonna do some sort of fermenting with them this morning. We have some daikon, we have black Spanish round radish, purple top turnips, and apples that grow on trees, and wild apples, and some really dried out horseradish that I never processed, but it'll rehydrate in the ferment if I can get my knife to get through it. I'm just gonna wash them. I'm not gonna peel any parts unless they really need it. I've done all this washing and now I'm gonna start chopping. I'm gonna do a combination of chopping and grating. I'm gonna grate the daikon because they're kind of more watery and they contribute to the brine getting going faster. And maybe some of the turnips I'll grate and some I'll chop. And the apples I will chop and I will not peel. If this isn't too slimy, I like to put this in. If there are parts that have soil that I could not get out with the sponge or any kind of activity of my own, then I'm just going to cut them out and compost them. I think it's nice having different cuts in one ferment, so like these ends, if they're not too dried out, I like to throw those in. They're kind of fun to get when you're eating, even if it turns out you don't want to eat it. It's kind of enjoyable. And then I'll grate. I'll put this in. Usually I salt as I go. When I get a certain amount in the bowl, I'll toss in some salt and mix it with my hands and taste it. And when it's at a level that's just slightly saltier than I would want the finished ferment to be, I stop salting and I add more vegetables. I salt those and then I kind of mix it all together and taste it at the end. But this time I know that I have these leftover brines from older ferments that I want to use up, and I'm going to put them in this. So I'm going to wait to salt until the very end. I'm going to dump in those brines and also some fermented garlic from last year. And then I'm going to salt once those are in, and I can get a sense of how salty that makes it without any other salt. You know, I've chopped the horseradish fairly finely and everything else. So I have this leftover brine from fermented jalapenos I made over the summer. I just do 2 tablespoons of salt in a quart of water poured over sliced jalapenos and let it get fermented for a bunch of days. And I'm going to pour all that juice on this with all the seeds, and it has some spice and fermented saltiness. And then I have this fermented garlic cloves from December 2019. Usually I start fermenting garlic cloves later on when our garlic is starting to sprout and I don't want it to all just dry out and go bad. But this, I guess I did early because we had a lot of garlic. That's the same. It's 2 tablespoons of salt and a quart of water, and just mix up the brine, and I peel the cloves and pour it over and let them sit till they're fermented. So I am going to add a bunch of this chopped into this. And the brine of that's really good in soups and things like that. Same with the fermented jalapeno brine. Maybe I'll add that amount. I'll chop it and add all that. The only salt source I've put in so far is the leftover fermenting liquid from the jalapenos, and then this garlic is definitely infused with the salty fermented flavor. So I'm going to add a tiny bit of salt just to feel my way into this process. And I'm just going to start mixing. And already, it's wet. I know that this is not enough salt for the whole thing, but I'm gonna get it all kind of evenly mixed and then see what's happening. But you can see because of the grating of the daikon, it gave it liquid really fast, more than it would have had if they were all just in these chunks. Just gonna taste something. It's got like no salt, barely at all, so you can taste the jalapeno. So, well, you really can taste the jalapeno. And probably the horseradish. Oh, and the radish. Yeah, it's a rugged. Sean would say rugged. I just go like a little bit by a little bit. I'm conservative with the salt. And I mix it and taste it, mix it and taste it, and then when it's like you put it on your tongue and immediately you taste that salty flavor, it's just a little bit over what you'd want in the end. That's the right amount. So you taste it often so you don't go beyond that point. Although I guess if you do, you can just add more vegetables. But I am, you know what, this is so sharp because of these radishes, so sharp tasting, that I have all these leftover apples I didn't think I was going to use, and I am going to use them. Because it needs that sweetness to balance that sharpness. The fermenting would take the sharpness down some too, but very sharp. Now I've added a lot more apple, including like the peels and everything. I like how it looks like that. And then I'll add some more salt and continue on with this mixing and salting scene. And it's a lot more liquid already. So now it's all mixed and salted and already very wet. Like there's a lot, I mean there's a lot more liquid than just the jalapeno fermenting liquid I poured on. I'm just gonna pack it into this 5-gallon bucket that's clean.
Does it have to fill the container that you're putting it in?
No. In fact, it's good if there's some space, so that because I'm gonna put a weight on this, and we just don't want a lot of air to be involved. Now I need some kind of barrier between the top of the ferment and what I'm gonna put down as a weight. When it's more summertime, I use black currant leaves or grape leaves or horseradish leaves, burdock leaves, whatever you can find. But now we have snow on the ground, so I sent Sean on an excursion to get me a branch from the oak tree. And the tannins in the oak, similar to the black currant leaves, they help keep the crispness in the ferment. So that's an added bonus. I'm just gonna pull off these leaves and cover the top of the ferment with them. I have this other bucket that fits inside this bucket. It's also full of some liquid, so it's heavy. I washed the bottom half, and now I'm just gonna fit it in here as a weight and to keep out very much air. So this will just sit in the kitchen for the next bunch of days where I am a lot, so I can kind of keep my eye on how it's going, and I'll taste it in a few days. Tomorrow I'll make sure that the liquid has risen and that the ferment is covered with liquid, which I know will happen with this one because it already probably has. It was pretty wet. It's been a couple weeks since I first put the ferment into this bucket, and now I'm gonna see what's going on. I've been looking a little bit, but it's pretty strong smelling. It's pretty wet. You can see the oak leaves made a nice cap, and the liquid looks really nice to me. Now it's like 8 in the morning and I've just had coffee, so the idea of eating this like radishy kraut is not that thrilling, but I will for purposes on the video.
crunchy and good.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear? It's the leaves that did that, and I think actually like the strong weight. That's really good. So I actually think the flavors could develop more if it just kept fermenting, but we want some of it to start eating, so I'm gonna take off a quart jar to put in the fridge, and then the rest I'm just gonna put back in the same way and put it in the root cellar, so it's not in the heat of the kitchen. Well, the kitchen's not that hot, but it can keep fermenting, but a little bit more slowly, and I can easily just keep taking some off when we want it. I'll keep an oak leaf in the one I'm putting, just keep it fresh. That's pretty good.